All right, I'm live. Today, actually, in addition to Rumble and YouTube, I'm actually going to be live streaming for the first time to Odyssey. And let's just see, actually, if we can see if that's actually going to work out. While I'm waiting for some people to trickle into the stream, like I said, I just want to check out how this thing's going to work out over there on Odyssey. Nice to see. I'm finally, because Odyssey, they had just started rolling out the live streams to a few select people. But now I've seen that I've been accepted to use their live streaming service. So let's give it a try. Just going to see now. I'm just pulling it up here. Where do we go here? Yep. All right. So it's showing that it's actually working right now on Odyssey. So let me just say hi here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Whoops, I got to. I better mute that. Okay, so there on just put something in the chat over there on Odyssey, and maybe I think why not? Why not? Let's see about doing that over on the old Rumble as well. Actually, I've noticed, strangely enough, I haven't done much in terms of, well, I haven't done any live streams over on Odyssey, but I have noticed that my videos uploaded to Odyssey are getting more attention, more views than even the ones over on Rumble. So Odyssey's turning out to be a pretty good site. Now, let me just check over here, like I say, on the Rumble. Can I comment into, aha, I can. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining the stream. All right, see how that pans out. Let me just make sure it's actually working. Yep. Right on. Oh, what's that? What's that? Looks like it. Yeah. Okay. Just make sure it's actually. Well, this is great. This is great. It's just like being a kid again with new toys or something at Christmas. I'm actually figuring out all this stuff, and I figured it all on my own how to do all this stuff. With you got to get the stream key, and although I did notice on Odyssey it said that I can reuse the same stream key. Actually, on Rumble I might be able to do that as well. It wasn't clarified, but I am seeing that my live streams, the last few, have been uploaded double. There's two of them for some reason on my Rumble channel. But like I say, it's great to have these alternative platforms available. I do see there's a few people that have already made it into the chat, and I'm sure some of you folks will probably be aware of the fact that, and I think I'm pretty much one of the very few. If you know any other ones, actually put me in contact with them. Maybe put their name somewhere down there in the description or in the chat section, because I'd like to know, actually, are there any other people who are critical thinkers, right? People who are actually genuinely not playing politics, but trying to figure out what's going on, right, with the level 4 lab out in Winnipeg and that RCMP investigation that I've basically, since it was first reported on by the CBC and the rest there, when this first started unfolding, was way back in early 2019. Now, here we are in early 2022, so it's been a long process, and even back then it got to the point where there's an actual RCMP investigation into something that transpired or took place in that level 4 lab. And you got to take into account that this was just prior to, right, or in and around the same time frame as the COVID-19 outbreak. So really interesting stuff. Like I say, if you haven't already looked at some of my past live streams, just go to my YouTube channel, or once again, my Rumble or Odyssey, any one of them, and just use wherever the search function is, and type in a couple keywords for tags, because I always tag those kinds of videos and live streams. So if it has anything, if you just type in RCMP, Wuhan, or Winnipeg, level 4 lab, right? Anything like keywords like that, and you'll see the oh, I don't know how many, but it's been quite a few actual videos that I've done over those over the time, videos and live streams. So anyways, like I say, let me get to the subject matter. I see a few people. Actually, let me just check in the comments here. What's going on with John Mark Dugan on Rumble? Hey, what's going on? Aha! John Mark Dugan on Rumble. So I would assume then, known as Bad Wolf. Nice. Bad Wolf. Bad Wolf. Known as Bad Wolf. Okay. So is this comment actually coming from Rumble? Really? That's awesome. Actually, let me go check that out. See if it's because it's hard to tell if I can get the comments from the other platforms. I know I can get them from anyone that's watching from YouTube, but like I say, it's difficult to see if exactly or precisely these comments are coming from, unless I have all of the platforms opened up at once. And today I've tried actually eliminating my router. See if I can. I don't know. I was having issues with my internet there yesterday, but we're going to see if it's actually going to stay much better in terms of the quality today. Commenting. Oh, you're commenting from YouTube. Okay, right on. Excellent. Excellent. Oh, that must be your name over on Rumble, I would assume, is what you were saying. Or yeah, I guess your name over there on Rumble. Well, I'll have to check that out there once I get a chance. And like I say, I know it was quite early, and I know YouTube doesn't give out the notifications or they're quite sparing with the notifications. But this is a very important topic or subject matter, like I say, that we're going to be covering today. So let me, without further ado, I think there's a few people in the chat, and we'll get a few more trickle in, no doubt. So let's just get right to it here. So this is the most recent article. Let me bring me down here into the picture portion here so we can actually expand on that article a little bit more so you have a better, can see it better. Let me get rid of the ads. Okay, so as you can see, it's a headline article of the National Post with the headline, Biowarfare Experts Question Why Canada Was Sending Lethal Viruses to China. I think the Chinese activities are highly suspicious, one expert said, after it was revealed a Winnipeg lab sent samples of Ebola and Hepavirus to China. This was reported by Tom Blackwell back in, this was August 8th of 2019. So like I say, we're talking, well, this was the article, sorry. So actually, this is not the recent article. This is actually an older article from back, like I say, in August of 2019. And now, of course, we've got, let me just bring this back up here 1 sec. Let me pull that off real quick here. Okie doke. And then, of course, we've got this other one here. Let me bring this up. Or maybe I should actually, let me read a little bit from this one. Okay. Let me just read a little bit from this one before I actually continue on to some of the other subsequent articles. So in a tabletop pandemic exercise at Johns Hopkins University last year, a pathogen based on the emerging Nipah virus was released by fictional extremists, killing 150 million people. A less apocalyptic scenario mapped out by a blue ribbon U.S. panel envisioned Nipah being dispersed by terrorists and claiming over 6,000 American lives. Scientists from Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory have also said the highly lethal bug is a potential bioweapon. But this March, that same lab shipped samples of the Hemapavirus family and of Ebola to China, which has long been suspected of running a secretive biological warfare program. China strongly denies it makes germ weapons And Canadian officials said the shipment was part of its efforts to support public health research worldwide. Sharing of such samples internationally is relatively standard practice. But some experts are raising questions about the March transfer, which appears to be at the center of a shadowy RCMP investigation and dismissal of a top scientist. Actually, it was two, top scientists. Well, this article is one scientist at the Winnipeg based National Microbiology Lab. I would say this Canadian contribution might likely be counterproductive, said Danny Shohan, a biological and chemical warfare expert at Israel's Bar Ilan University. I think the Chinese activities are highly suspicious in terms of exploring at least those viruses as BW agents. James Giordano, a neurology professor at Georgetown University and senior fellow in biowarfare at the U.S. Special Operations Command, said it's worrisome on a few fronts. China's growing investment in bioscience, looser ethics around gene editing, and other cutting-edge technology and integration between government and academia raise the specter of such pathogens being weaponized, he said. That could mean an offensive agent or a modified germ let loose by proxies for which only China has the treatment or vaccine, said Giordano, co-head of Georgetown's Brain Science and Global Law of Policy program. So you got to remember, like I said, this article was from way back in 2019. So keep that stuff in mind as I'm reading it as well. This is not warfare per se, he said, but what it's doing is leveraging the capacity to act as global savior, which then creates various levels of macro and microeconomic and biopower dependencies. Ask if the possibility of the Canadian germs being diverted into a Chinese weapon program is connected to other upheavals at the microbiology lab. Public Health Agency of Canada spokeswoman Anna Madison said this week the agency continues to look into the administrative matter. The agency divulged last week that it sent samples of Ebola and Henipavirus, which includes Nipah and the related Hendra, to China in March. It was meant for virus research, part of the agency's mission to back international public health research, a spokesman said. Last month, an acclaimed NML scientist, Zhangyu Ji Wei, was reportedly escorted out of the lab along with her husband, another biologist, and members of her research team. The agency said it was investigating an administrative issue and had referred a possible policy breach to the RCMP. Little more has been said about the affair. China has been a signatory to the Biological Weapons Convention since 1984 and has repeatedly insisted it is abiding by the treaty that bans developing bioweapons. But suspicions have persisted with U.S. State Department and other agencies stating publicly as recently as 2009 that they believe China has offensive biological agents. Of course, we've got to keep in mind as well the testimony we've heard down from not just Fauci basically having to admit it, to Rand Paul in some of those congressional hearings or whatever they were doing down there in terms of the gain of function research, right? That's taken place. So let me, like I say, there's okay. Though no details have appeared in the open literature, China is commonly considered to have an active biological warfare program, says the Federation of American Scientists. An official with U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Chemical Defense charged last month China is the world leader in toxic threats. In a 2015 academic paper, Shoham of Bar Ilan's Began Sadat Center for Strategic Studies asserts that more than 40 Chinese facilities are involved in bioweapon production. China's Academy of Military Medical Science actually developed an Ebola drug called JK05, but little has been divulged about it or the defense facility's possession of the virus, prompting speculation its Ebola cells are part of China's biowarfare arsenal, Sloan told the National Post. Ebola is classified as a Category A bioterrorism agent by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, meaning it could be easily transmitted from person to person, would result in high death rates, and might cause panic. The CDC lists Nipah as a Category C substance, a deadly emerging pathogen that could be engineered for mass dissemination. Nipah, which was first seen in Malaysia in 1998, has caused a series of outbreaks across East and South Asia with deadly rates mostly over 50% and as high as 100%, with death rates, wow, according to World Health Organization figures. It can cause encephalitis and often fatal brain swelling and has no known treatment or vaccine. The John Hopkins exercise called Clade X involved a version of Nipah modified to be more easily passed between people. America's Blue Ribbon Study Panel in Biodefense prefaced its 2015 report with a scenario involving the intentional release of Nipah by aerosol spray. China's extensive and controversial use of CRISPR gene editing and related technology makes it conceivable the country could bioengineer germs like Nipah to make them even more dangerous, Giordano said. So like I say, this is just one article as it pertains to this. So if you're not privy to this, I got a fan on here and it's actually blowing a little bit too much here. Just one second. I actually don't need to be cooled down that much. Let's be honest there today. But anyway, so like I say, let me just bring up another article, or actually, let me just scroll into the stream here, see if a few people have joined in here. He is reporting from Russia on biolabs, has a whistleblower from lab in Ukraine. Oh, who's this? What's this? Oh, okay. Oh, this is the person on Rumble, I suggest, or I assume you're talking about. Okay, gotcha. Canada, Turdope is trying to pass Bill S-233, which, if passed, means unvaccinated seniors will not receive EI, CPP, social services, and any seniors benefits to force vaccination on seniors. I believe the 233, I believe that's the universal basic income bill, from what I remember. Not sure if I haven't read that entire bill, but I do know I'm fairly certain that that's the one pertaining to the universal basic income, right? Let me just double check on that. S-233 bill S-233. Oh, no, maybe not. Something else is coming up here. Something else was coming up. Well, okay, no, that does say the National Framework for Guaranteed Livable Income. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess you're probably talking about the other aspects of it, right, that are contained within it. So I get you there, but I'm kind of for now I'm just sticking to the story as it pertains to this biological thing, because I get it. Maybe it's not anything that even interests you, and I understand that, but because there's very few people, like I say, none that I'm actually aware of that would be challenging the status quo or the establishment media, right? I'm not even aware of anyone else other than myself that has been extensively covering this story over the last couple of years, and I'm going to continue to do so because who knows what else is going to come to light as a consequence of some of this stuff. Hey, what's going on, Jesus? They sure are a hell of a lot of evil people out there with power and in power. You're right about that, my friend. You are absolutely right about that. So, anyways, like I say, I'm going to bring up another article as it pertains to this story. So, to get some of you folks that, like I say, maybe aren't privy to some of this information up to speed, what we're talking about, because, like I say, this has a profound effect, not just in terms of COVID and all that stuff, but any potential stuff in the future. Or, hey, that's another thing we got to take into consideration, right? With the word, bioweapons, right? And laboratories on people's minds and on their tongues today because of the conflict, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And apparently there being a bunch of biological facilities or laboratories in that country as well. So, like I say, there's a lot of stuff that might tie this stuff all together, right? This is the thing. It's really difficult, but it's important to, like I say, take the time to deal with these stories and these issues, even if, it might not be sensationalized. Some people, I get, and I totally get it. In a way, I kind of get why a lot of the people, I get discouraged from time to time, but I kind of get why some other people are getting much higher viewerships, right? And subscriber counts and stuff than I do. It's because, I guess my stuff is too boring. I get it. Most people today, it's just like when I remember back like those TV shows, those reality-based TV shows, the daytime ones, like, I couldn't stand them, but I realized how like, oh, they were extremely popular, like your Jerry Springers. People love listening to sensationalist bullshit for some reason, right? It's like, I don't know. That's the way they get their dopamine or their adrenaline rushes, I guess. But I find other ways to do that stuff. So like I say, I do tend to get into the nitty gritty of things, but it's kind of important that at least some of us do it, right? So let's make sure that we got this article pulled back up. Yep. Okay. So this one, like I say, this one here, a little bit more recent. This one comes out of the Toronto Star, and it was September 18th, 2021, when this one was released with a headline: Canadians must know what our lab's role was in COVID's origins. China resists more investigation in its borders, but one strand of the trial leads to Winnipeg, writes author and journalist Elaine Dwyer. We are at the bitter end of a whirlwind election campaign in which the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, which has killed 27,000 Canadians and counting. Of course, this article should be revised and updated to reflect the actual real numbers, Star. It would probably be wise. I get it. Maybe that's not the point of this article, so it's not something you're overly concerned with. But yeah, did they really die? Did all 27,000 Canadians at that point truly die? Because now that we've seen that the numbers have been revisited and revised, we're seeing in some jurisdictions, places like Ontario, and even here in my own province, New Brunswick, we're up to half of the people who are either hospitalized or in ICU, and we're seeing that those numbers of death would obviously be included in that as well. It was because of the way they were measuring things. So the numbers could skew quite a bit lower. We're talking in terms of hospitalizations in ICUs down as low as half of that. So like I say, did they die? Did these 27,000 Canadians actually die from COVID alone, from COVID-19, just because they contracted COVID-19 and that alone with no other contributing factors or comorbidities or health issues? Was that alone the only reason why the person died? I would suggest no in many cases. And actually, I expect that will be confirmed at some point in time as well. Anyways, like I say, so counting has been used as the debate version of a right hook to the prime minister's jaw, as in, why did you call this election, sir? We are in the middle of a pandemic. The PM, fumbling for an answer, has insisted Canadians need to weigh in on a major decision about how we will defeat COVID-19 and how we will rebuild after it's over, if it will ever be. But no serious questions have been raised in this campaign about how we got into this mess and what our government must do to prevent another like it. In particular, there's been radio silence on the origin question. And you know that, right? Especially if you're like me and you've been paying attention to the media, every since the outbreak of COVID. Yeah, very, very, very few, well, even some of the reporting, it's telling what happened, but where's the investigation? Like I say, the big investigation, not just by Canadian media, but like I say, the AP, Reuters, where's the big, huge investigations? Maybe there are some actually underway now that I'm just not privy to, but I would like to know. And whatever happened to where they were supposed to go into China? Of course, China made them wait a year later. Yeah, you can come and investigate and check out our lab in a year, right? Well, that kind of messes everything up if you want to get a proper investigation done. So, maybe the horse has already left the burn in terms of what we can do there, but there should, at the very least, be a coordinated or concerted effort for anyone, Western countries or anyone around the world, to figure out the origins where this come from, because that's a really, really, if it was just something that it was just a mutation from nature that hopped from multiple species to humans, right? If that's the case, then, it's bad, not a good thing. And, we'll have to obviously find ways to like I say, or like they suggest, to deal with these things going forward. But there's a huge difference between that and the potential of this being something souped up or whipped up in a lab. And whether, like I say, to me, it doesn't even necessarily mean that these things were done as a means to be a biological weapon. It could also mean, and I've alluded to this in the past, it could also just simply mean that there was a mistake or an accident happened in one of these facilities. And, rather than just coming out and being forthright and honest about it, they tried to cover it up and made things actually that much worse, progressively worse, right? So once again, I'm not suggesting myself to have any genuine knowledge where the origins of COVID came from, but I'm very inquisitive and I want to know why or where, so that that thing, because if this is something that, like I say, has to do with these laboratories, then there's some real work that needs to be done with these laboratories to make sure something like this never happens again, right? Anyways, back to the article. Every epidemiologist will explain, if asked, that it is vital to determine the pandemic's origin if we want to keep it from popping up all over again after we think we've stamped it out. If SARS-CoV-2 spilled over from an animal population in China, as some scientists argue, though they have produced no evidence, we have to find the animal population and cull it. Otherwise, it will become a reservoir for disease. United States, through the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, spent more than $200 million over 10 years to try to predict the name of its program when a virus might spill from an animal host to the human population. It spent some of that in China on the work of Xi Zhengyi at the Wuhan Institute of Virology through USAID. Though USAID funded labs in viral hotspots in more than 30 countries, they all failed to predict any of the viral outbreaks that have occurred since 2009. Predict missed the Ebola outbreaks in West Africa between 2000 and 2016, chikungunya in Madagascar, the transformation of Zika in 2017 from an innocuous virus circulating mainly in Uganda to a worldwide scourge that caused babies to be born with microcephaly. Microcephaly? Yeah. The US last year created a new program which will spend $80 million on many of the same foreign labs surveying animals for signs of viral trouble. And then there's the Global Virome Project. Pharma giant Merck, along with Bill Gates and China's Center for Disease Control and Prevention leader George Gao, hope to catalog the genomes of every virus on the planet. These programs focus on nature as the culprit. Critics of them contend that they spend a bundle but deliver nothing, and that disease surveillance of humans is what we have to improve. As I believe my new book shows, we do have to focus on humans, but especially on what leading scientists have been doing in laboratories around the world. This virus is likely the product of human hubris and human error, leaked by accident from one of two labs in Wuhan, China, where researchers have been studying coronavirus since the SARS pandemic of 2003. This wouldn't be the first time a pandemic began in a lab. However, tracking down a pandemic's origin in a lab in an authoritarian country not known for its transparency, but well known for its propaganda department, presents a different problem. Yeah, it sure does. How do we regulate what scientists do in countries that won't cooperate with the international community and fail to regulate their scientists? Or worse, cover up the wrongdoing? The capacities of biotechnology leaders have expanded so fast that the founder of the PREDICT program, Dr. Dennis Carroll, expects that synthesizing a functional virus from a genome sequence alone will soon be so routine that high school students will be able to do it in their garage. Lab safety practices in places like Indonesia make his hair stand on end. Xizeng Li of the WTV, also known in China as Batwoman, for 17 years has sent her students all over China to sample for SARS-like coronavirus. They take bats and their feces back to their lab in Wuhan, search them for viral sequences, synthesize coronaviruses from those sequences, and since 2013 have done gain-of-function experiments on viruses they found. Gain-of-function experiments entail making the virus more virulent and transmissible, sometimes to humans. The stated goal of this work is to figure out what nature might do before it does it and prepare vaccines in advance. Interesting stuff, right? Very interesting. So far, no cigar. As far as we know. Hauling samples to a lab in the middle of a city of 11 million and then injecting human cells and test animals with those viruses is like lighting a match in a closed room when you smell gas. Every step along the way presents the possibility of a leak into the human population. Xi Jinping has explained that she did some of her gain of function experiments with SARS like coronaviruses in labs with lesser containment that would be permitted under US rules. Her US funders did not appear to know that. In May, the US confirmed that an allied nation had evidence that three researchers from the WTV went to hospital for treatment in the middle of November 2019, which is when SARS-CoV-19 first appeared in the population in Wuhan, already fully adapted to human beings. But what has this got to do with Canada? Xi Jinping got funded from the U.S. National Institute of Health and USAID, but her lab also worked with researchers at the highest containment facility in the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. Seen the connections yet? I am. The NML, or the potential connections, I should say. The NML is Canada's only high containment lab for the study of human pathogens. Its top level 4 lab, the sort devoted to the most dangerous microbes, was led by Shenggu Kui, recipient in 2018 of the Governor General's Innovation Award for an antibody cocktail against Ebola. Shenggu Kui and her husband, Kading Chang, were marched out of the lab in 2019 by the RCMP. Their security clearances and access to data allegedly withdrawn. Our federal government claimed this was nothing serious, just something to do with administrative matters. Yet it occurred just months after Kui sent 15 strands of Ebola, Nipah, and other glycoproteins to the WTV. Those samples helped seed the WTV's own newly opened level 4 lab. That is not the only connection between the NML and China's military civilian biotechnology leadership. After Xi Jinping came to power in 2013, the line in China between military and civilian biotech work was erased. The relationship between the Chinese biotech military leadership and Qi and Cheng at the NML started in 2015 and continued even after Qi and Cheng were fired without explanation in January of this year. The Chinese military civilian researchers included George F. Gao and China's leading bioweapons expert, Major General Chen Wei of the People's Liberation Army. He and Cheng and other NML staff published papers in leading journals, co-authored with Chen Wei and Gao and their junior colleagues. One paper described the test of an Ebola vaccine created by Chen Wei, which was injected into macaques in Winnipeg. Another described an Ebola treatment using antibodies derived from Chinese subjects, likely soldiers, inoculated with Chen Wei's vaccine. These studies were of benefit to China's state industries, which have invested billions through the Belt and Road Initiative in African countries where, unlike China, Ebola is endemic. In other words, while the two Canadian Michaels, Koering and Spavor, languished in prison in China, held hostage there over the Meng Wanzhou extradition case, Canadian government researchers worked with and helped train staff at the WTV lab that I believe leaked the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Canadians need to know why the Public Health Agency of Canada, which oversees the MNL, permitted such close relationships for so long between the military civilian leadership in China, a country of which we have no regulatory oversight or political influence, and researchers in a government facility here. We need to know why the NML sent deadly pathogens to a lab in China where military researchers such as Chen Wei work. The WTV is where Chen Wei created China's first SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, administering it first to soldiers. As with her Ebola vaccine, she used a Canadian cell line licensed to the Chinese company by a Canadian federal agency. The vaccine was supposed to be tested and possibly licensed for manufacture in Canada, but Chinese officials refused to let it be sent here. More punishment for the Wanzhou affair. Pinpointing the exact origins of SARS-CoV-2 is vital not just to Canadians, but for the world. The World Health Organization convened joint study of its origin, which involved China's researchers and a small team of foreign scientists deemed acceptable to China, did not permit any investigation of the lab leak hypothesis. China withheld early samples of the virus and information about the earliest patients. What the final report did show was that China had made a truly diligent search for possible animal reservoirs of SARS-CoV-2. Its scientists found no trace of it in any animal except for a few cats in Wuhan. Since the WHO study report was published in March, China has refused to allow any more investigation within its borders. What recourse does the world have? Political pressure has been ineffective though millions have died and millions more will die. In Canada, we can at least get to the bottom of what our own scientists and bureaucrats did with regards to the conduct of dangerous experiments on behalf of a country that is not our friend. So once again, that's another excellent. Of course, all of these articles, anything that I'm covering within or containing within this stream is going to be placed in the link of the description of the stream. Because like I say, this is a very, very important topic to deal with. I know Ukraine is on the minds of most people these days, but once again, we cannot allow these things or these stories, as much as they are present and concerning to, and they should be to us, got to keep things into context and the other things that are happening as well. Hey, Gato, what's going on with you, my friend? This would have never happened in a lab with a biosafety of level 2, much less in a level 4. A level 4 lab is so regulated, this leak would have been impossible. The article is nothing but lies. Well, there's an awful lot of well, once again, I don't make any claims to know, and actually probably wouldn't be a good idea to make a claim like that, Gato. Like, you don't have that kind of information. Oh, geez, I see I'm brightened up here. The sun is out shining big time. Let me just see if I can't do something to affect the brightness here. Because that is ridiculously bright, isn't it? All right, let's see. Is that any better? That is odd. It was okay earlier. It's very strange. It's very, very strange. Something leaked from the lab. If something. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I mean, it's possible. I see where you're going with there, but neither of us could actually be knowledgeable enough, unless you have any evidence of that, and you want to you want to go into a program or something. We will never know. Well, that's a possibility, right? That is a possibility that we may never truly know. Although I would like to think that there's still the potential for it. But I get what you're saying there, Gato. It does seem like it's something that would be difficult for it to happen. Or you would think there would be enough, like you say, levels of protection that to prevent such a thing. But once again, there's no way to say that with 100% certainty. China. What's going on, Anarcha? How you doing today? They will be protected. Yeah. There was another article. This one out of Maclean's. I'm just going to get to it here, but trying to figure out what's going on with the lighting in my room here. Let me see if I turn off a few. I might have to just turn off. Turn off all my lights. No, it's still brighter than all get out, isn't it? That seems weird. I literally got all these lights off and it's still bright as all get out. There we go. Now I'm going to have to probably turn. So sorry, folks. Insanity. Well, the sun wasn't out earlier, so I didn't actually have the curtains fully closed. Okay, we're back. Sun, as much as I love when you're coming out, just not right now. Okay. Yeah, actually, yeah. Maybe I need to explain. In a level 4, everything is disinfected constantly. You don't even wear the same clothes you wear outside the lab. Everything is contaminated. Yeah, I could understand that. That would make total sense. I mean, obviously, you would have really intensive, health and safety practices in a lab that deals with such deadly pathogens or viruses. I totally get what you're saying there. The air in the lab is changed every few minutes. Is filtered with EPA. Yeah, right on. So, like I say, once again, and thank you for your contribution, Gato. I know you're familiar with that stuff. I believe you actually work a along the lines of this kind of stuff. So I take your opinion and your perspective, into to heart there. So thank you for your contributions. Now let me get to this. Like I say, there was this other article. This one came out. Let me bring it up here. Like I say, this one is really recent. Find out how recent it is exactly here. Just one sec. So yeah, so this is February 15th, 2022. Aha, that's funny. It's actually that Justin Ling guy. He was one of the guys who was on the panelists, one of the panelists on the Poor Ross Media that I watched. And yeah, I watched it yesterday and it's really good. And I'll probably do a live stream or something or a standalone video or something covering that. It was quite interesting. But anyway, so like I say, this one here is pretty recent. With the headline, like I said, Adam McLean's, a brilliant scientist was mysteriously fired from a Winnipeg virus lab. No one knows why. Okay, let me just check here where I'm at over here. Okay. She was escorted away by the RCMP more than 2 years ago, sparking international controversy. What really happened to Shangu? I'm not good with pronouncing these names, folks. Shangu Kui. Like I said, this reported by Justin Ling, February 15th, 2022. All right, let's get the font here to the size so I can do some decent reading here. So Zhanggu Kui, I'll just say XQ, would seem an unlikely character in a tale of international intrigue. A mild-mannered scientist who won accolades for her work fighting the deadly Ebola virus inside Canada's most secure laboratory. Her career was cut short in July 2019. When she and her husband were escorted out of her Winnipeg lab by the RCMP. Since then, she has become a central figure in a major political battle in Ottawa and the star of international conspiracy theories. She has been accused of selling state secrets, contributing to a clandestine Chinese bioweapons program, and even of helping to create COVID-19. The story of XQ is still shrouded in mystery, but former colleagues have told McLean's her case has more to do with tensions and warring priorities inside the lab than with anything more nefarious. Q's own signature accomplishment, they say, offers some clues as to exactly where it all went wrong. A medical doctor and biologist, Key joined the National Microbiology Lab run by the Public Health Agency of Canada in 2003. Much of her work at NML focused on Ebola. There, she led a project that hoped to prove the lab-grown monoclonal antibodies could stop the virus from infecting healthy cells. If their strategy worked, it could be a huge breakthrough in treating other viral infections, from HIV to other coronaviruses to who knows what else. Her husband, Kading Cheng, also a biologist at the lab, helped the project on occasion. Now, once again, let's keep in mind the connection between the Chinese government, the military, the Chinese military, and these two scientists. Because as we're familiar now, Justin Ling and McLean's are quite left-leaning and biased. And if they were under any suspicion that this might be attributed to anything about Canada or that would affect the reputation of the Liberals or anyone, you know what I mean? Because all this stuff is happening under the Liberal watch, right? They've been in charge, right, since 2015. So this could be, but we're going to pay attention. That's why, like I said, that's why, as you see, I covered a National Post article taking one stance, and now I'm covering this McLean, because that's what it means to have a well-rounded mind, to be able to think about these things more critically, is to get multiple perspectives, right? But like I say, keep all this stuff in mind. Okay, yeah, help the project. Okay. So in 2005, Key and her colleagues in NML's Special Pathogen Program published a paper outlining how these monoclonal antibodies could work, but their promise was still hypothetical. They had been used to treat cancer and other illnesses for years, but the problem was that viruses like Ebola overran their target's immune system incredibly quickly, and the antibodies just couldn't act fast enough. While many of Key's colleagues went off to work on the lab's more promising Ebola vaccine she plugged away. Despite the fact that everybody was saying that it will never work, says Dr. Gary Cobbinger, then the head of the program. She kept going. The NML is Canada's only biosafety level 4 facility. Level 4 is the world's most secure classification, which means the NML can handle the most deadly and dangerous pathogens. The lab exists to pursue research that's impossible for smaller labs or unprofitable for private facilities. But being government run comes with its own drawbacks. In 2010, the NML faced significant budget cuts. Cobbinger had to put a number of projects on ice, but he gave Key a deadline. I said, listen, we're going to design experiments, and we have 6 months, he recalls. With the clock running out, something clicked. Key tried introducing 3 different monoclonal antibodies at the same time, which rapidly flooded the immune system of the lab animal. Monkeys infected with Ebola on death's door staged miraculous recoveries. She called the cocktail of those 3 antibodies ZMA-B. The relief almost jumps off the page in a paper her team published in 2013. The results reported here demonstrate for the first time complete protection against lethal Ebola infection when treatment is initiated as late as 3 days post-infection. ZMA-B was quickly patented by the lab and licensed by a Canadian company. When an Ebola epidemic began in West Africa in 2014, Health Canada ordered a small batch of ZMA-B to be made. Partnering with 2 Canadian biomanufacturing companies, they produced a small run of antibodies, enough to give frontline medical workers who had been infected on the front lines. It was the first time the antibodies had been given to a patient infected with Ebola, and it worked. Years later, one doctor who received ZMA-B would visit the lab to thank Key and Cobbinger for saving his life. The government scientists weren't in it for the money or glory when an American company, MAP Biopharmaceutical, came forward with their own antibody cocktail. The Winnipeg lab offered to combine the two. They called the resulting treatment ZMAP. Ottawa drew up plans to mass produce the cocktail and ship it to West Africa for $60 million. The Canadian government could have domestically produced enough antibodies, either ZMA-B or ZMAP, to treat 40,000 people suffering from Ebola, but it never happened. Instead of investing in 2 Canadian companies that were well placed to manufacture the antibodies, which would have set Canada up as a more serious manufacturing hub, Ottawa instead tried to outsource the work to an American company. Canada never acquired a significant amount of the Winnipeg design therapy. Okay, are you going to get to anything of importance here? The idea lived on, however. The American company Regeneron developed a 3 antibiotic cocktail that has proven remarkably effective in treating Ebola patients. Others have also built on the breakthrough. Monoclonal antibodies used to treat COVID-19 have cut the risk of death by as much as 70%, while the first monoclonal antibody therapy was recently approved to treat and prevent HIV infection. The possibilities are endless. In 2018, Key was awarded a Governor General's Innovation Award alongside Cobbinger for developing ZMBA and heralded for her commitment to unorthodox cutting-edge technologies that went against prevailing scientific opinion. Okay. So many labs are developing antibody therapies for other diseases, she said after receiving her award. I'm very happy. It's not just that we found a cure for Ebola, but our work is having an impact on the whole scientific community. It has become a blueprint for treating these other infectious diseases. This is what I'm the most excited about, Cobbinger told me in 2019, not long after Key was removed from the lab. I think to just have a little contribution to this was my career. Inside the lab, however, there was frustration. A number of those who worked there told Maclean's that many felt the special pathogen program had discovered a way to save tens of thousands of lives and could have been a world leader in these versatile therapeutics. Instead, the government squandered the opportunity by taking a short-sighted commercial approach. Most Canadians weren't familiar with Key or the NML, not until their 2019 removal from the lab set off a political firestorm. Details of what exactly Key is alleged to have done remain murky. PHAC would say only that she was removed from the lab pending an administrative investigation, with the department vowing it was taking steps to resolve it expeditiously. The RCMP launched its own investigation in 2020, but it remains unclear what exactly they're investigating. CSIS confirms they have been contracted by the contacted by the RCMP, but insists the investigation belongs to the police, not the intelligence agency. I mean, the RCMP is Canada's federal police force, right? So, in the two and a half years since, no charges have been laid. In the absence of any explanation, reporting around the case is focused on Key's connection to China. News outlets fixate on her work with scientists from the Academy of Military Science of the People's Liberation Army, which does a significant amount of work researching infectious diseases and vaccines. Some reporting focused on the fact that graduate students from the University of Manitoba, whose research was supervised by Key, were also removed from the lab. The university declined to comment on those students, but previously told the CBC they had been reassigned to other professors. There was breathless reporting that she had shipped dangerous viruses, including Ebola, to a BSL-4 level 4 lab in Wuhan, China, and ample speculation that she may have handed off Canadian intellectual property to contacts in China. Let me just see who that was real quick. All right, I'll call them back later. In Ottawa, opposition parties characterized the firings as a national security crisis and evidence of the Trudeau government's too cozy relationship with China. When they demanded documents from PHAC, the Attorney General intervened to block their release. Doing so, the government argued, could jeopardize future, still hypothetical court proceedings. As of early 2022, that figure remains unresolved. The parties continue to wrangle over how those records could be released and who should decide what information to disclose, redact, or withhold entirely. Conspiracy theories percolated on disreputable blogs and disinformation portals. After all, they argued, hadn't COVID leaked out of the very same Wuhan lab Key had collaborated with? Other tenuous allegations were advanced by Erin O'Toole, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, who demanded to know how she got clearance to work at the secret facility in Winnipeg in the first place. Remains an open question what happened to Dr. Key. So as we're getting in this article, it seems like, right, the way it's being covered has quite a little bit of a different political bent. There almost seems like in a defensive posturing, right, for these scientists. It almost seems that's the way it's coming across to me, anyways. Former colleagues see clues to Key and Cheng's forced exit in the story of ZMAB. Under the then Conservative government, Key's former colleagues say Ottawa became obsessed with intellectual property. That means research facilities like the NML were pressed to focus on research that could be readily patented, passed off to private companies, and commercialized. This led to tensions in the lab between scientists hoping for life-saving breakthroughs and administrators who were tasked with reducing costs and generating licensing revenue. Most former colleagues would only speak off the record so as not to jeopardize their jobs or professional relationships. Key herself did not respond to multiple interview requests for the story. So, I mean, think about this, right? Another potential thing here in terms of the investigation, or at least one aspect of it could very well be, based on what I'm reading here, is, yeah, if this was intellectual property and there were going to be any of this work that was going to be done there was going to be commercialized and patented, basically under the Harper conservatives, basically akin to what the U.S. type example, how they would do things, right? Is, I suppose, another potential thing is if, like I say, these people didn't like the fact they wanted to, just like you're hearing today, like have equity, right? For everybody around the world, have equity and equal access to these vaccines. Who's to say that these things weren't taken from these facilities without the express permission for the sole purpose of, like I say, handed off to the Chinese government so they could offer something free around the world, right? So it could also be just an economic story or bend to this thing. Once again, I don't know, or it could be a matter of both. This is the thing, though. One thing we do know for sure is there is an ongoing investigation, and there does seem to be a very cozy connection to not just the level 4 lab in Winnipeg, but it seems between, even with some of the laboratories in the US, right? The CDC down in the US, Fauci, and that institution in Wuhan, China. So it does seem that there's at least some kind of connection there. What the connection is, I don't know. I'm not privy to enough insider knowledge or information to make that determination. I don't think any of us are at this particular point. But like I say, it's really important that we stay on top of this stuff because this is really, really vitally important. We're talking about something that has affected the lives of billions of people around the world for 2 years. People like, especially those of us in Canada, who are still, there are millions of us in Canada are still under lockdown, not even allowed to leave our own country, right? This is some crazy stuff. And we've seen, right, what the effect that had. I mean, you had the largest protest movement I've ever seen in my life come to exist in fruition as a consequence of these vaccine mandates. And once again, that's all a consequence of COVID, SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, right? So all this stuff is tying into, it's having profound social and economic effects and implications in all of our lives. And as it pertains to our freedoms and our liberties, our inherent freedoms and liberties. So like I say, these are really important things that we got to cover. And it's something, like I say, there should be more. I don't know how much resource is going into this, but I would suggest to some of these big conglomerates, if you want to remain, for the establishment media folks, if you want to remain relevant, get to the bottom of this story. Do your work. Do what you're supposed to do. Do what you supposedly do best and figure this stuff out, or at least help try to get to some point of trying to figure this stuff out. You might gain back some credibility and stop playing politics with it. I would definitely suggest and recommend, even for the contributor here for the McLeans, keep your political spin away from it. Just back away from the politics. I know it's really fucking hard, especially anyone that has to do with the CBC, right? But just try once in your life to remain a little bit independent and unbiased. I know it's difficult, requires training and practice, but hey, just give it a shot. Give it a shot. See how it works for you. ZMAB was an emblematic of that shift. Plans to continue producing the treatment at home in Canada with taxpayer money were abandoned in favor of leaving the project to MAP Biopharmaceutical, even though MAP has yet to make any significant quantity of the treatment. A similar fate nearly befell the Ebola vaccine developed by the MLA. A 2020 report from researchers at Dalhousie University found the private sector was not only unnecessary for its development, but also likely slowed it down. Yeah, like I say, well, there's going to be a huge discrepancy there. And actually, that's a good thing. I'm not a fan of government and corporations being real closely in bed with each other, even though corporations are an act of legislation, right? So government does create them. But at least for the people who run these businesses, and they claim, or they at least believe in their minds, that they're private citizens, right? And they're private entities, and they run a private business because that's what they believe. Hopefully, they're. I mean, think about it. Government is more efficient at something than the market could be. That seems at least questionable at best. At least I should say. In tightly controlled labs like the NML, there is a Byzantine set of procedures, protocols, and paperwork at the best of times. Some of that is related to safety, given the dangerous materials being handled. Guarding against theft and espionage is also a key concern. It's why employees at the lab had to be vetted by CSIS for the security clearance before working at the NML. Well, if CSIS vetted them for the security clearances before, like if you're vetted for security clearances, like what, they just forgot to check into the fact that these two scientists, had very cozy and close relationship with the Chinese government and the Chinese military. I mean, I think that should be a bit of a red flag, right? That should at least give people pause before you would want to do that, or give them their accreditation. Wow. Anyways, maybe that should be investigated as well. But the new emphasis on commercialization meant a renewed focus on intellectual property. Scientists, however, felt like they were being asked to draw blood from a stone. Research in rare infection diseases, scientists explained to me, simply isn't very lucrative or attractive to the private sector. Therapies and vaccines are really only useful during an outbreak. And during a pandemic, they're often sold at cost or given away. There was a feeling that this new focus was hobbling what scientists saw as their humanitarian mandate, right? So they're not just doing their humanitarian mandate. So they're not just there doing their job, but apparently they have a humanitarian mandate. Well, what does that mean? What does that entail? What does that encompass? You know, I'd like to read the fine lines, the fine details contained within that particular policy. Is it political in nature? Right? Because a scientist should only be doing what a scientist does, right? Do stick with your science. Not so sure, not so certain on this humanitarian mandate. I mean, of course, do no harm, just like a doctor's Hippocratic oath, right? I could understand that, but what is this humanitarian mandate? I would like to know. We were so ahead on all fronts to have lost all this advantage, Cobbinger said, is unfortunate. It wasn't long after ZMAB that Cobbinger sat down with Key to tell her he was quitting the NML. I said, Key, listen, we will lose all this ground, he recalls. If I want to continue to have a chance to contribute, I need to just leave and go into academia. Cobbinger left for the University of Laval in 2016. Last year, he was appointed director of the prestigious Galveston National Laboratory, a BSL 4 facility in Texas. He stayed, and thanks to her breakthrough on ZMAB, she was receiving calls from around the world looking to collaborate. There was particular interest from China, which had recently completed work on its first level 4 lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a mix of global ambition and domestic concerns following the 2003 SARS outbreak, meaning Beijing was looking to beef up its domestic virology research. Canada was bullish on the idea of deeper ties with China, no doubt under the Trudeau regime. He's a big fan of China, right? The National Research Council, for example, was happy to provide one of its proprietary cell lines to help Chinese researchers develop new vaccine platforms, even heralding a breakthrough Ebola vaccine in 2018 as a prime example of strategic R&D collaboration. Ottawa would later try to partner with that manufacturer, CanSilo, on a COVID-19 vaccine, only to see the deal fall apart when China froze shipments of the vaccine amid political tensions. He was an asset in building scientific relationships. She had been in Canada since the mid-90s, but hailed from Tianjin, China, just south of Beijing, and has obtained her medical degree of Master's of Immunology in China. When the World Health Organization asked Canada for personnel to help prepare for the Beijing Olympics in 2008, Key was chosen to go. Over her years in the lab, she regularly partnered with researchers in China on strategies to beat viral epidemic caused by Ebola and coronavirus. One colleague told Maclean's that Key recognized her identity might be a complicating factor, especially in a lab where a security clearance was a must. She worked harder and was especially cautious, the colleague says, because she was a woman, because she was Chinese. So as you can see, now you're even getting into some identity politics at play here, right? Some of that caution would prove to be warranted. Ottawa's relationship with China cooled significantly in 2018 with the arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou, followed by the retaliatory and arbitrary arrest of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovig. Long simmering concerns about Chinese espionage and intellectual property theft suddenly rocketed to the forefront. He wasn't oblivious. When her name appeared on patents submitted to the Chinese National Intellectual Property Administration, 2 breakthroughs in treating Ebola and the related Marburg virus, which built on her published work, she quickly informed her boss to say it was done without her knowledge or permission, a former colleague says. It was a recognition of her contribution to the field of research, Key explained, not evidence of her clandestine cooperation with a foreign lab. Indeed, Key regularly collaborated with researchers in China on Ebola countermeasures, as did others in the lab. But the focus on commercialization and intellectual property meant another layer of scrutiny, making sure that Canada retained ownership and credit for everything it reasonably could claim ownership and credit for. A former colleague says Key and some of her colleagues sometimes found themselves at odds with the Intellectual Property Office. While Key was extremely hardworking, they say she was sometimes guilty of playing a little bit fast and loose with the rules. She was a little bit guilty of playing a little bit fast and loose with the rules, huh? But they stress Key wasn't the only one who bristled at the idea of worrying about paperwork and intellectual property rules. As scientists tried to make breakthroughs that promised to save thousands, maybe millions of lives, scientists are a weird bunch, a former colleague says. They're willing to take the funding, but don't like the idea of following all the rules. Interesting. The sudden shift in relationships with China likely increased the scrutiny on Key's work, they say. They posit that a combination of an arrogant attitude towards rule following and her not understanding the geopolitical ramifications of cooperating with your home country may have gotten her into this mess. Yeah, she just didn't realize that this brilliant woman, right? Just couldn't figure that stuff out, right? Like I say, sounds like a lot of sounds like this contributor here, that this Justin Link is doing a job of being the apologist here, right? Yeah, I just didn't understand. Whoops. Key's former colleagues say the Ebola shipment was indeed what got Key in trouble with her bosses, not because she secretly collaborated with Beijing, but because she finally ran afoul of the lab's obsession with intellectual property. Ran afoul. So that's, like I said, sounds like she broke the rules. Sounds like, from what this is suggesting, that she took those things without the permission, right? To that lab in Wuhan. I mean, and that's the thing. If this woman is so politically active, or is an activist in some form or fashion, rather than just the scientist that she's supposed to be, yeah, once again, that's a very dangerous thing to have, right? Is to have someone who are political activists who also have a cozy relationship with the Chinese government and the Chinese military, right? That's not just potential in terms of the intellectual property, but of other aspects as well. In May 2018, Key wrote an email to David Salvernitz, head of the special pathogen program at lab. A colleague at a government-run lab in Wuhan, she wrote, has contacted me for possibility to receive Nipah and Ebola viruses from us. If possible, what paperwork needs to be done besides the import permit from them and export permit from us, MTA. An MTA, or material transfer agreement, governs the terms under which one lab might share a sample with another. It can dictate, for example, that the lab providing the sample owns the material in perpetuity. It could also require that any innovations or discoveries that come as a result of the sample must also be owned by the lab that provided the sample, and set terms on what kind of research could be forbidden. Aha! And set terms, right? That's pretty important key factor in this, right? And set terms on what kind of research could be forbidden. So let's say, the level 4 lab in Canada was completely against, let's just suggest they were against any gain of function research, right? Well, what if this woman, right? I'm just speculating here, just hypothesizing, right? But what if that was the potential, right? Was that the research was going to be outside of the privy, or what would have been acceptable to that Canadian level 4 lab? Could that play into this? Could very well, right? I don't understand why MTA has to be in place in this case if PHAC doesn't request it, Key wrote. Given that the viruses were collected from outbreaks in West Africa, she posited, no one owns the IP. There was debate in the lab about whether the agreement was necessary. Personally, I don't believe in MTAs for these materials, Safranetz wrote. Matthew Gilmore, then head of the NML, weighed in some months later. MTAs would be required, not generic guarantees. MTAs would be required, not generic guarantees on their storage and usage. Yet, far from being skeptical or hostile towards the Chinese lab, Key's bosses seemed excited by the prospect of building better ties with the BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. Are there materials that the Wuhan Institute of Virology have that we would benefit from receiving? Other viral, not sure of that one, hemorrhagic fevers, high path flu, Gilmore wrote? High path flu. Safranitz assured his boss that the transfer agreement would be filed out. The shipment left Toronto in late March 2019. We can confirm that we have all records pertaining to the shipment and that all protocols were followed, one email reads. The viral sample arrived. The viral and one that is not, and one that was collected in West Africa, that is not Canada's position. Ottawa believes if it comes from a government freezer, it belongs to the government. By not signing an MTA, Canada would likely for discoveries the Chinese researchers made using the NML samples. When Ian Stewart, the then head of PHAC, was called before a parliamentary committee in May 2021 to shed light on the investigation, he stressed that the fact that the again was done in compliance with internal policies and proper approvals is not connected to the departure of the two employees. An MTA, explained, was not explicitly required as it is not a safety requirement, but a document that provides a mechanism for transferring controlled materials from one party to another, primarily to safeguard intellectual property rights. So once again, this person is pushing back a little bit on that pretense, right? That, maybe it's not. Maybe this investigation doesn't have anything to do with that, right? So this person here is pushing back against the pretense that's what this whole debacle or what this investigation or what has taken place in that facility is all about. So once again, still up in the air and open to interpretation. Talking points developed by PHAC, written after Key was removed from the lab, read that an MTA was not required and the agency was looking to promote relationship building with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Sharing done to foster robust global health agenda by enabling scientific advancements on pathogens with potentially significant societal consequences. Those media lines also tried to downplay Key's work on ZMAB, reading PHAC's contribution to addressing Ebola goes beyond any one individual. The transfer of the virus itself may not have been the reason for their departure, but just 4 months after the virus was sent to Wuhan, Key and Cheng were escorted out of the lab. Not long after their removal in 2020, the government began requiring MTAs for all sample transfers for clarity to employees and safeguard for our science. At least some colleagues inside the lab believe that reasoning, despite PHAC's carefully worded denial that the firings were not related to the shipment itself, Key's position that Canada has no intellectual property claim to its viral samples is what got her into trouble. One of Key's former colleagues who spoke to Key in the weeks after removal from the lab says paperwork for the shipment, not done the right way, was the catalyst for a removal. From there, things snowballed. The removal of Key and Cheng from the NML could not have come at a worse time. Less than a year later, the Wuhan lab became the center of suspicions that the COVID-19 virus had originated there and leaked out. Investigations by the WHO and the United States intelligence community have failed to turn up any concrete proof, and both conclude that, barring new evidence, the theory that COVID-19 emerged from nature without human involvement is the right one. That did little to assuage skeptics. Well, once again, no, there are some people. You see how this is being presented here? There are some people in the United States in the WHO, right, that may believe or lean more towards the happening naturally or in nature story or premise. But that doesn't mean that everyone does, and that doesn't mean that the other couldn't be as possible, right? At Zero Hedge, a conspiracy website known to peddle Russian government misinformation, Key's removal from the lab became evidence of a broader plot. Did China steal coronavirus from Canada and weaponize it? One headline asked. It's an off-site open source repository of supposed proof for the theory that COVID-19 escaped from the lab devotes an entire page to Key. We asked you, the reader, to use your best judgment to determine if an investigation into a minor clerical or bureaucratic error, such as a misplaced form, would take nearly a year to conclude. The anonymous author wrote, concluding, we believe it is far more likely that this investigation involves matters of national security. In the House of Commons, the Conservative Party has seized on Key's background and links in. Can the Prime Minister tell the House how a person with deep connections to the Chinese military obtained a high-level Canadian security clearance? Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole asked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in May 2021. Act of a conclusion in search of evidence. Key's deep connections to the Chinese military consists of a handful of academic papers published in reputable journals that she co-authored with scientists working at the Chinese government's Academy of Military Science. If this person could be, just like I say, do a much better job of keeping his bias out of this, right? The sort of cooperation was hardly uncommon prior to the chilling of relationships in 2018. According to a document tabled in the House of Commons, there were 6 different papers published in recent years as collaborations between the Chinese military lab and the NML. There are more than a half dozen authors listed on those papers, apart from Key, who continue to work inside the government of Canada. One paper does not bear her name at all, and collaboration with the Chinese Academy of Military Science goes back to before 2015, under the Conservative government in which O'Toole was a minister. Conservative members of parliament have further called Key's removal an odd coincidence in light of winking to the theory that the virus originated in the Wuhan lab and accusing the Trudeau government of a cover-up and corruption in the case. So all those quotations obviously is this Justin Ling trying to debunk that possible scenario or theory, right? That's what they're doing. They're basically saying, no, it's this and not that. They're playing politics with something really, really important. Now, like I say, I'm reading from suggesting that I don't know, and either are potential or even something that don't fit nicely into either of those. There could be another third possibility that none of us are even thinking about, right? But this, obviously, contributor here to Maclean's, and I believe Justin Ling, I believe he's actually a CBC contributor as well, is obviously trying to put that political spin on it. And why? Because once again, you're talking about conservatives versus liberals. This is the problem with people and their goddamn tribalism and their political identities. It completely removes their ability to think clearly or objectively regarding anything. That's why I don't play those games. Information may continue to trickle out about Key's case and how Canada's intelligence agencies have probed her possible ties to Beijing, but given how fiercely the Liberal government is fighting to withhold this information, which includes classified material, the full story likely won't be known for some time. The Conservatives seem determined to weaponize the case to prove the Trudeau government's alleged interaction in tackling Chinese espionage. The lack of solid evidence is an asset in that effort. It's been 2.5 years since Key and Cheng were removed from the lab. It's been a year since they were actually fired in January 2021. And yet they have yet to be formally accused of anything. And it's not known if they have retained legal counsel. Now, let me just point out, I forget who else kind of informed me about this. It might have been a lawyer or someone that I was speaking with online, of course, but so in terms of them not being charged, here's another thing. And once again, this is me just speculating here, right? Not saying that this is fact or not, but I'm just saying this person was suggesting that, well, the reason why one possible or potential reason why nobody has been charged with any crimes as of yet. And as someone who has been charged with a crime in the past and, been through hell because of it, I won't bring that up there, but I'm very much privy to how being charged with crimes work and how that all plays out. Is the minute you're charged with a crime is the minute you can start to ask for disclosure. Full disclosure would be the proper and appropriate word to make sure you get all the information. But the minute you're charged with a crime, the Crown, the prosecutor, or whoever is doing the investigation, or the RCMP or CSIS, whoever these institutions that are doing this investigation, right? If charges are to be laid, then the people who would be the accused, right, would have access to disclosure. So they would have access to all of that material, all of those resources, all that information, right? And I'm pretty sure, right, if things are not, above par here, then there might be the potential of some nefarious things happen. Maybe the RCMP, maybe CSIS, maybe the Liberal government, right? Maybe some of these people don't want that information getting out just yet, right? So that's another potential. That's, once again, just speculating here. Not saying it's one way or the other, but I remember someone pointing that out to me, that one of the potential reasons why they're not being charged is, like they say, to keep that information, at least for now, hush hush. McLean's made repeated entreaties to the federal government to discuss Key and Chang firing, but was refused. It's not clear whether the couple is still in Canada or whether they have decamped to China, where they still have family. In Winnipeg, their home stands testament to the limbo the couple have been caught in. Their combined six-figure salaries went toward two things, a former colleague said: their children and purchasing their dream home. The couple took possession not long before they were escorted from the lab by the RCMP. Sitting in their home after being suspended from the lab, they fretted about making mortgage payments on the $1.2 million property. Key told her former coworker, "We have worked all our lives for this, for the house you're in." Key's former colleagues continue to believe that this was a bureaucratic snafu that was allowed to spiral into international imbroglio, as one colleague puts it, laughing. I never got the impression she was a sleeper agent. Other observers see the hallmarks of China's dogged efforts to build its own scientific expertise by stealing others' work. Whatever the explanation, it's high time for Ottawa and the RCMP to clarify what exactly Key is alleged to have done. At a time when Canada surely needs to maintain trust in its scientists, the mystery of the fired biologist has only allowed conspiracy and suspicion to fester. And in this area, this very small area, I would agree with this Justin Ling. So at least there's some common ground here. Is I would like to also press these people to get to the bottom of this issue, because it is really, really like the profound implications that it has, not just for Canada, the US, but like I say, for the world, for the globe, for any potential outbreaks or plan or pandemics in the future, right? So yeah, this is really important stuff here, folks. And sorry, I know that was a long article, but like I say, when I get this stuff and I do it in these streams, it's to make sure that you have access to all this information. And like I say, these things can be cut up into little snippets or sound bites or clips, which are a lot of things that some people do these days. So like I say, when I do these things, I want to do it extensively and exhaustively so that we're not leaving any stones unturned. Anyways, back to the old chat, see how you folks are doing. Probably got to scroll down here. Yeah, because I'm probably... All right, let's scroll down here. Okay, these labs are well beyond building protections. Why do 10 to 20 countries worldwide need to discover protections is unknown locations with unknown so-called well-meaning scientists? Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I mean, there's obviously reason for these labs, but yeah, just like with anything, you can use it for good and bad. And it's very concerning. These labs are not building protections, they are building weapons. Well, that is at least one potential, but we're absolutely... It's the thing, if we had the proper kind of investigative journalists, right, that actually look to hold government to account, if they recognize and deem their positions are to be the ones who hold those in positions of authority or government or these actors if they were doing their jobs appropriately and properly and using their resources for that purpose, then, we may very well have gotten to this point. But like I say, those in the media, it seems today, well, this is, as you recognize, this is kind of boring stuff, right? No, they're more concerned with right now, putting a blue and yellow flag in their profile pictures and saying, I support Ukraine, right? Or, it's just plain identity politics kind of stuff. But like I say, a lot more effort needs to go into trying to figure this stuff out, because this is a really, really important story. Hey, what's going on, Stuart? Thanks for joining the stream, my friend. Oh, by the way, if there's anyone, I haven't, that's the thing, I haven't done a collab or interviewed anyone in quite some time, and I'm actually looking to get into that. I just don't know where to start, where to turn. There's some great people. There's Kate Wand, that Julie Ponesse, David Haskell. I mean, there's some great people out there in Canada today that are talking about the kind of things that I've been talking about a long time. And I love to actually, when I sit and listen to these folks, there's so many times I wish I could interject my voice into those conversations, because there's a few things that I think I could bring to the table that maybe those folks haven't quite thought of as of yet, but they're doing a great job, like I say. And I just named just a few names off the top of my head because I was watching a video earlier on, but some great people out there that are doing a really great job talking about all aspects of freedom and liberty and where we go from here and the what is the state? What's the point of individualism and the detriments of collectivism? I'm so glad to see that these kinds of conversations are actually coming to light and taking place in Canada, and not just by people like myself, right? But by actually other figures out there. And I'm so glad to see that. But maybe if some of you folks, before I tie the stream up, have any ideas or suggestions in who you would think. Now, I don't want to like go too high aim. Like one thing I don't want to do is like I wouldn't want to. I mean, at some point in time, maybe have a discussion with Jordan Peterson. But my problem is I don't want to get into the point where I just get a bunch of increase of supporters, of subscribers and stuff, just because of like I'm not that much of an intention whore, right? Like I'm fine with just gradual growth based on the fact that people just genuinely want to come watch my content. I don't want you to come watch my channel because I had someone else on it. Because if you can, maybe you want to see Jordan Peters and he's got his own YouTube channel, right? So to me, it would be weird, and it almost would seem to me like it would be just about garner attention or higher subscriber count. And yeah, no, just like when I race my cars or bikes or anything I've ever raced in or any competitive venture is I want to make sure I've done it on my own and because of what I did, right? If you're going to watch my content, I want you to watch it because of what I provide, not because I got other people to do that for me or to, to use their popularity to my advantage. I'm not a big fan of that one. But I'm definitely looking at some of the people, like I say, that I've been that I mentioned there. Well, these are people that I have a tremendous amount of stuff in common with. I think we would find a tremendous amount of common ground. But at the same time, I'm looking for areas where maybe we're not 100% in agreement there, and maybe could because when you're talking, even like when I talk in my own personal space with people, it's amazing the kind of things you can get just by talking to other people that have even slightly different variances in terms of their opinions or perspective, because it tweaks and helps improve the way my mind works and functions, and it does for most people as well. Anyways, I'm probably going to tie up this stream here right about now because, like I say, this was just something I wanted to get on record, and I think I did a pretty good job of making that a reality. Actually, no, there was one other thing. Sorry. This actually is one other story that I think I better cover. I won't read the entirety of it, but I do want to cover this one last story before I tie it up because it's all pertaining to the same issue at hand. So thank you, folks, for your patience, and I'll try to get by this as quickly as possible. Okay. Okay, so this one here, this is in a Globe and Mail. So as you can see, I've used the National Post, I've used the Star article, Maclean's, and this one's on the Globe and Mail. Globe Mail. So all over not really all over the spectrum, but in Canada, at least multiple sources in terms of the information, right? So this one here is RCMP investigating Winnipeg scientists fired from lab for possible transfer of intellectual property to China. Reported by Ottawa Bureau Chief Robert Fife and Stephen Chase, June 30th, 2021. So this a little bit of an older article as well, but not that old. RCMP are investigating whether two scientists dismissed from Canada's top security infectious disease laboratory passed on Canadian intellectual property to China, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The investigation centers on the possibility that materials such as plasma DNA molecules, which could be used to recreate vaccines or viruses, were transferred to Chinese authorities without the approval of the Public Health Agency of Canada, according to a source with direct knowledge of the matter. So let me read that again. That's an interesting take on it, right? So once again, think about it. Just by using these multiple sources, I'm getting a much more knowledge and even just using like in when they were saying of taking some of these things right over there. Well, this explains it much better. So materials such as plasma DNA molecules, which could be used to recreate vaccines or viruses, right? That were transferred to. So once again, this is quite pertinent. I mean, considering the fact that this all took place, this all happened in and around, or at least close to the same time frame that COVID-19 come to exist, right? Really important stuff. The Globe and Mail has also learned that the RCMP has been informed that XQ and her husband, Kading Cheng, recently relocated to China after they were fired in January from the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. So that article from Maclean's, which is odd, right? Because that Maclean's article, let me scroll back up here. Yeah, that Maclean's article, it was February 15th of 22. So very, very, very recent. And remember when I was reading that, they said they weren't aware if these Q and her husband there were in Canada or had gone back to China. But according to this article from the Globe and Mail, well, the Globe and Mail has also learned that the RCMP have been informed that her and her husband have recently relocated to China, and that would after they were fired in January so that was quite a long time ago, right? I mean, this article was run last year. It's 6 months old, and they already at that point in time, 6 months ago, knew that these people actually were no longer in Canada and had gone to China. So that's interesting. Those are interesting facts that were omitted. You know, like I say, whether by mistake or on purpose, we're getting extra information here that we weren't getting in the Maclean's article. As part of the criminal probe of the couple, the source says the RCMP investigation has expanded to determine how two People's Liberation Army scientists gained access to the Winnipeg lab, a level 4 facility equipped to handle some of the world's most dangerous viruses. So once again, how did they get clearance to work in this facility? Knowing, because you need a clearance, security clearance by CSIS, as we read in the other article. How do you get that kind of security clearance when you're employed by the People's Liberation Army, right? Or, like I say, I better clarify. I don't know if the word employed is appropriate, but have a connection or a tie or some kind of relationship with the People's Liberation Army in China, right? The CCP. The Globe is not identifying the source because they were not authorized to discuss the RCMP investigation. The probe began in July 2019 when the couple and an unknown number of students from China lost their security clearances and were escorted out of the Winnipeg facility. The RCMP declined to discuss the nature of the investigation on whether Dr. Key and her husband are on whether the RCMP declined to discuss the nature of the investigation or whether Dr. Key and her husband are now in China. So a little bit of a pushback there. Declined to discuss it. They declined to discuss it, but early on it kind of suggested that we're positioned to respond at this time. The investigation is continuing. Corporal Julie Coutrain of the Manitoba RCMP division said in a statement. Gary Kobinger, who shared a 2018 Governor General Award with Dr. Key for groundbreaking research on Ebola, told the Globe that the RCMP are investigating whether the couple transferred PHAC intellectual property to China. He was interviewed by the RCMP in March, he said. Their angle really wasn't intellectual property. Did she remove material out of NML? Dr. Kobinger said. They asked if I thought it was possible that she could have removed the material. The Public Health Agency of Canada has described the reasons for the departure as an administrative matter and possible breaches of security here we go. And possible breaches of security protocol. So see, this is once again. So in other articles, we heard about the administrative matter, right? But I didn't hear this being specified, and it's being quoted. So when they quote those things, and you'll see they'll have source links contained within it, just like where you see these underlined parts. So this is actually they're quoting from an actual someone that spoke or a memo or a release of some sort. So possible breaches of security protocols. That's interesting as well. At the infectious disease lab, it has declined to say more, citing privacy and security considerations. After opposition MPs passed a motion to obtain unredacted records on why the two scientists were fired, the Liberal government said it could not release the information because it contained sensitive national security matters. The government has since gone to the Federal Court of Canada to block the information being provided to Parliament. Dr. Kobinger said MPs have the right to know why the two scientists were fired And he believes Dr. Key would agree. They should have got the cassette from Key. I am sure she would have said no problem. She wanted this cleared up as soon as possible, he said. He said he told the RCMP that there should be no. Oh. He said he told the RCMP that there should be no reason for Dr. Key to take material out of the lab. Key is at the level she doesn't need to bring anything out. She can just redo everything, he said. Interesting. He confirmed what the Globe reported in May, that the Canadian Security Intelligence Services argued the removal of the two scientists relating to their travel to China and collaboration with Chinese scientists. Let me read that again. He confirmed what the Globe reported in May, that the Canadian Security Intelligence Service urged the removal of the two scientists relating to their travels to China and collaboration with Chinese scientists. In that context, she was flagged by CSIS as maybe sharing intellectual property with people in Wuhan without proper documentation, he said. Dr. Cominger, who worked at NML with Dr. Key until 2016 and is now director at the Research Center of Infectious Disease at Laval University, said he last spoke to Dr. Key in last December. She assured him that she did not do anything illegal. Well, that she believes. Right? We read in the other article that she has a different beliefs in what things should be legal or not, right? She doesn't necessarily agree with the Canadian government and what they said it is legal or illegal. First, she had lost a lot of weight with all the stress. She was so convinced that this was all a misunderstanding and she would go back to her job, he said. She had been hammered. Her career has been destroyed with all this. She was one of the top female Canadian scientists of virology, and Canada's lost that. Dr. Cominger said the Mounties were not interested in the transfers of Ebola and Hendra viruses to the Wuhan Institute of Virology that took place 4 months before the couple lost their security clearances. Although Dr. Key had a role in the shipments, Dr. Cominger said the RCMP acknowledged that higher level officials approved the transfers. Right? It's still something that should be concerning, just because someone. Dr. Key was the former head of the vaccine development and antiviral therapy section and special pathogens program at the Winnipeg lab and traveled frequently to China, including repeated visits to the Wuhan Level 4 lab in late May. The Globe revealed that she and her husband collaborated with Chinese military scientists on experiments and co-authored papers on deadly pathogens such as Ebola, Lassa fever, was it Kif Valley fever? While the Chinese researchers, Feiyu Yang of the People's Liberation Army Academy of Military and Medical Sciences, worked for a period of time at the Winnipeg lab. Ooh. One of the Chinese researchers, Feiyu Yang of the People's Liberation Army Academy of Military and Medical Sciences, worked for a period of time at the Winnipeg lab? How the heck did this one get clearances, right? In a December 2018 paper co-authored with Dr. Key, he listed his affiliation with NML and the Department of Medical Microbiology at the University of Manitoba. The university recently told the Globe that they had no record of him being registered there. Well, that's highly suspicious, is it not? That seems quite strange and would require further inquiry investigation. And like I say, at this point, we're not getting anywhere close to. There's no new articles. There's no new information that have come out. Apparently, the investigation is still ongoing. The source said the RCMP has since learned that a second PLA scientist worked at NML. The Globe has not been able to identify this scientist. The Globe reported that Dr. Key was able to bring into the Winnipeg lab graduate and postgraduate students from China who were studying under her at the University of Manitoba. The government said no new collaborations on research projects have been initiated with China, and all cooperation with the Wuhan Institute ended in the summer of 2019 when the couple's security clearances were revoked. Once again, very, very interesting. The couple owns 2 homes in Winnipeg, including a rental property. A third property, which they also own, is in cottage country in Gimli, Manitoba. In June, the Globe was unable to find anyone living at the couple's principal residence, valued at $1.2 million. Like, why do you got to put does it really matter what their house costs? Like, I don't know. It's a, I don't know what. oh, they shouldn't be able to have such rich houses kind of thing. I don't know. Whatever. I don't. And located in the suburbs, a nearby neighbor who did not want to be identified said no one has been living at the residence for at least the past 6 months. A man comes periodically to check on the property and to do a little yard work, the neighbor said. A second property valued at what 500 5 or 3 yeah, 524,000 is rented to two international students from China. The students did not give their names, but told the Globe that they believe their landlords moved to Vancouver and had no idea if they would be returning to Winnipeg. They said they had no email or phone number for them and that they communicated with the couple and paid the rent through WeChat, a Chinese language social media app. Anyway, so there's that one, and that's going to be the last of the articles for this stream. And like I say, I'm going to get to the point here now where I'll tie up this stream. And like I say, I really appreciate all you folks that have showed up here to check it out with me, because like I say, there's some interesting stuff contained within here. Imagine being that wordy and still not telling the reader anything. I know, right? I know, and I'm sorry about that, and I'm sorry for putting all you folks through this. But like I say, it's important stuff, and to get it all on record is the main, obviously, aspect and an important part of it for me. And like I say, with you listening to this stuff, it might spark something. That's the other thing. By you listening to this stuff, it might spark something in your own mind where you're thinking more about this and contribute some of your own thoughts. So, like I say, it's just good information to have. And as I was mentioning earlier, I'm going to get ready to tie up this stream. So you folks enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the next one. I think the next thing I might do, like I say, I'm really happy. Oh, by the way, definitely go and subscribe to me over, please, if you wouldn't mind. Go over there and subscribe to me now over there on not just Rumble, but over on Odyssey. And I'm going to be actually upping my subscription there on Odyssey to get up to my to go on to the premium plan. That's going to help me out a little bit further on there. And actually, they got a really, really great price. It's only, I think they're only going to charge like $2.99, $3.99 a month to put me on the premium plan over there, which, like I say, give me a. And I'm starting to see, and my audience is starting to grow over there, and even over on Rumble. So, like I say, because we know that these social media behemoths, YouTube included, are getting the point. Although for me in particular, YouTube hasn't really been suppressing me so much yet, but the potential is still there. Like I was saying yesterday in the live stream, it may very well be just the fact that I don't have a big enough audience for them to be overly concerned with me. But if that time does come, we got to make sure, just like others out there, that if you go on YouTube some days, say, hey, we're Canadian Libertarian, go, well, at the very least, you're like, oh, no worries. I'll just go watch his content over there on Rumble or over there on Odyssey, right? So, like I say, check me out over there. Definitely subscribe or follow, whichever the one it is over there. And I'll, like I say, I'll check you all you folks out and talk to you in the next live stream. It's Canadian Libertarian. I love liberty.